Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and in this week's Weekend Essay Podcast, we have feature writer Amanda Newman Smith asking, what does it mean to be professional? Take it away, Amanda. Join us at Money Marketing Interactive Leads on Thursday, 11th May. Just go to Money Marketing's website to secure your seat at our industry-leading event and hear from notable figures in the industry. See you there.
What does it mean to be professional? I've recently been thinking about what it means to be professional. Strange as it sounds, this was triggered by the Get Back documentary about the Beatles that I've recently been watching with my husband and kids. For anyone who hasn't seen this, it follows the band in 1969 during the making of their final album, Let It Be. This was released about a month after the Beatles had broken up, and it's obvious in these sessions that they're soon to go their separate ways. You see them visibly bored and frustrated, sometimes playing fragments of new material that will eventually become solo releases. They are managing themselves at this point. Their legendary manager Brian Epstein had died a couple of years earlier, and you can see in the footage how Paul McCartney stepped up to fill the role of leader. He oscillates between being one of the lads and telling the others what they should be doing, which doesn't always go down well. But there are also moments where the band mess around, singing in daft accents and having a laugh. You get to see the personalities behind the music and how they interact, not only with each other and their production team, but with their partners and children. These studio sessions, spanning 8 hours of footage, don't seem very productive overall. They completely exploded any romantic notions I had about the creative process and the music industry. The band constantly struggled to reach the end of songs, so you hear the same one, usually Get Back, over and over again. Once the American R&B musician Billy Preston comes in to play keyboards, professionalism seems to kick in, culminating in the famous impromptu rooftop performance at the Apple headquarters in central London, the last live performance of the Beatles' career. The difference between this polished performance and what we'd seen in the studio sessions left me wondering how they managed to pull it off. But not everyone was impressed. The police received complaints about the disturbance, and as they appeared on screen trying to get the volume turned down, my kids were in hysterics at the genius stalling tactics of Jimmy, Apple's doorman, and Debbie, the receptionist. Jimmy and Debbie are shown to be extremely polite to the investigating officers and show their willingness to help, while at the same time still managing to delay the police gaining access to the roof, which of course enabled the 42-minute performance to continue uninterrupted. This gave me food for thought as I went about my usual business at Money Marketing. Do qualifications and experience lead to a professional attitude? Does being professional mean focusing on your job from the time you clock on to the time you knock off, excluding legitimate breaks? Should you keep your work life and home life separate? And is that even possible with hybrid working and working from home? Is being professional about the end result rather than the journey to get there? Do we still care about courtesy and good manners in business life? These questions kept resonating with me throughout my week at work. First up, someone who had been keen to contribute to an article I was writing was non-contactable on the day. After chasing this up, I was told by a press officer that it would be best to write my piece without their input. I was given an apology from the press officer, but no explanation. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't expecting a blow-by-blow account of the unforeseen circumstances that meant this person couldn't deliver. Some things are private, even if they do impact on your work schedule. But it would have been nice to at least have received an email letting me know things had changed, rather than have been left to discover that for myself. Surely that's just good manners. Someone recently told me I'm not the only one experiencing this kind of thing. They'd been talking to someone else in financial services who had also found people have no qualms about cancelling meetings at the last minute or failing to deliver what was promised. I hear that there are posts on social media sites such as LinkedIn that talk about it being okay to push back on things when you've got a lot on your plate. From a wellbeing perspective, I get it and I do sympathise. I wouldn't want my demands to weigh heavily on someone who is struggling to cope with a workload. Health must come first. But from a professional point of view, it's only fair to let people know you can't meet your commitments. It's also more professional to be cruel to be kind and decline than knowing you'll probably let someone down if you say yes. I'd rather have my requests for comments or interviews met with a polite, maybe next time, than risk being left with a massive hole to fill on deadline day. It reminds me of a situation I faced at work when my eldest child was a toddler. I'd arranged to meet someone in the investment industry around midday, but a tube strike had scuppered my childcare arrangements that morning. Knowing that cancelling on the day wasn't ideal, but thinking my contact would understand that my mum being stuck on a bus miles away was exceptional circumstances, as my boss had done, I called them to explain. They were not happy, and I could hear the irritation in their voice. I was told they didn't live in London and had to get up several hours earlier than normal to get a train into the city just to see me. Back then, I was a relatively new mum and nowhere near as assertive as I am now. I didn't want people to think I was letting my personal life affect my ability to do my job, which sounds silly to me now as I had a supportive boss and key contacts knew I was conscientious. But at that time, I didn't want to upset a contact and appear unprofessional. So I apologised for suggesting we cancelled and ended up pushing my son in his pram to my grand's house, hoping she could look after him for a couple of hours while I met my contact, which she did. My contact's response was perhaps of its time, when the business world generally took a tougher stance on the boundaries between work and personal lives. It seems to me that since lockdown, we've all become more accepting of colleagues, employees and business contacts having personal lives that can, at times, collide with work. But people who think this is unprofessional still exist. I've been reprimanded fairly recently by someone who I've only spoken to once because my dog barked during a video call. I'm in no rush to speak to this person again. Maybe they prefer cats. It can work the other way though. One advisor couldn't apologise enough for having to reschedule our meeting because his father had died. It was so much more than the courtesy call I was talking about earlier. He was genuinely annoyed at himself for not being able to work as normal, in addition to making all the necessary arrangements for his father. I think it shows how hard people can be on themselves when trying to be professional. This was brought home to me during a chat with a female advisor who used to work in a different area of financial services. We were chatting about International Women's Day and how we both enjoyed hearing stories of how female advisors got into the profession. The advisor said there isn't enough recognition of what women do to get to that point and to do the job. They might be career changers with young families who do their qualifications while still holding down a job and looking after their families. As a working parent myself, I know the logistics involved in getting kids off to school or arranging childcare, ensuring everyone in the family's day is set up correctly, then getting yourself ready and on the train or in the car at the right time, which takes a lot of organisation, discipline and commitment that starts the night before. It's like a game of Jenga. Everything is finely balanced, but if one bit of the structure is removed, a cancelled train, a childminder off sick, the whole thing can fall down and we berate ourselves. The female advisor had worked with people who were very rigid in their expectations and didn't care about any of this other stuff. I knew how this felt. When I was a young journalist working for a national newspaper group, my editor needed some photos to run alongside a story I'd written. I'd put the call in with my contact, but she was unable to help me. She was taking my call from the hospital where her best friend had just died. I told her I was sorry, not to worry about the photos, and I'd catch her another time. But my boss, a former Fleet Street journalist, had other ideas. He ordered me back on the phone to get the photos across in the next couple of hours. There was not a flicker of compassion. Death was just a nuisance that wasn't going to stop him getting things done. I did what I was told, but I hated doing it. So was I being professional in following orders I didn't agree with? Yes, but my moral compass suffered greatly. Was my boss being professional in pursuing what he needed to get his job done? Yes, definitely, but it didn't create a great impression of him as a human being. Not that he cared about that. When it comes to financial advice, trust and empathy are words that crop up all the time. But I don't think you get this unless you put your real self out there, which can be quite a scary thing to do if you're not used to it, and cut other people some slack. For what it's worth, my best professional relationships are with people who open up to me, as I do with them. Being professional is all about mutual respect at the end of the day. Nothing more and nothing less.
Thanks, Amanda, for another thought-provoking weekend essay podcast. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcast from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition, Money Marketing Magazine, so make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.